do the Cubans want US intervention? Like, the average Cuban citizen, do they want US intervention, or are they like, "No, leave us the fuck alone," like, we go
So let me see. Let me see.
'cause
Does
I'm
do
under
the
the,
average Cubans want U.S. intervention? Hmm?
I'm under the impression the average Cuban does not want US intervention and is like, "US, please leave us the fuck alone."
Okay, so based on recent data and reports through early 2026, here's a breakdown. Okay, desire for economic normalization, not necessarily military intervention. Surveys and field reports suggest that while there is a massive discontent with Cuban government, the primary desire for economic relief rather than foreign boots on the ground, normalization of relations in a notable NORC survey, 55% of Cubans said that normalizing relations with the US would be mostly good for the country. Most Cubans prioritize economic growth and stability while they blame the regime's mismanagement for shortages. So they don't blame the United States for shortages.
But
Many also view US sanctions, the embargo, as a significant contributor to their daily hardship. Private enterprise, there is a strong internal push for capitalism. Roughly two-thirds of Cubans favor more private ownership of business. Interesting. I didn't know that. I just learned something. So most Cubans want capitalism, two-thirds of them. That's big.
okay, but that's
That's
still a
kind of
huge gap between that and, like, wanting the US to go come in militarily and take out the regime.
yeah, yeah. But you're right. Yeah, that's true. But they are pro. They do want to be pro friends with the Americans, though. Apparently, most of them
You know,
do
I
want
mean,
to.
I would like to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. I don't want Saudi Arabia coming in and kidnapping Bibi,
I'm just reading you the
and I don't even
reports.
fucking like
I'm not.
Bibi, and I
I'm
don't
not.
want that
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's obvious that Iranian people have a lot more justification for wanting military intervention because, as bad as the Cuban government might be when it comes to economic policy, they're not slaughtering tens of thousands of their citizens in the streets or doing mass executions of people who challenge them, right? It
Yeah,
takes it takes the level of evilness of Islamic Republic for you to be like, yeah, please, like military intervention. Thank you very much, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Jeffrey wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, a significant, I would contend, majority of Cubans indeed want U.S. intervention to remove the violent Castro regime, or at least the remnants of it, with Raul and all his douche canoe buddies. If you want some of the main elements inside Cuba, so you have PACU, which is the Patriotic Union of Cuba. That's the largest dissident organization operating inside Cuba. You have the San Isidro movement. That's another one. You actually seen a lot of this a couple years ago when you had that uprising, and then you had you had like Cuba. It was actually, I think, I'm maybe former president, well, Trump's first term. So you had a lot of Cubans actually openly protesting against the violent Castro regime. It's very simple. We're about ready to clean out Cuba, and no protesting is going to stop that. No skittle hairs are going to stop that. That's all done. We are setting the pieces up. We are taking out all these proxies because we're not going to have like a Cuban Castro regime or the descendant or remnants of it acting as a center of gravity for Putin or the Chicoms or Hezbollah or anybody else in the Western Hemisphere. It's the same when it went on with Ecuador, and we're getting ready to actually use long range
Do
strike.
they work with Hezbollah?
What's
Like, does
that?
the Cuban regime work with
So, like,
Hezbollah?
I'm saying that just like in Central and South America, right? Say under the violent Marxist Maduro regime that very much work with Hezbollah, we are not going to allow communist regimes to be a center of gravity for any number of contemporary adversaries to engage in hybrid warfare against America. That shit is all done. All done. Doesn't matter how many protests happen. Nobody cares anymore. It's going to happen. And there's nothing like the squad can't do shit about it in Congress. There's nothing they can do. Like the War Powers Act gives us 60 and then 90 days of playtime. They can just shut their mouth. And that's it. They're going to go down. Period. And indeed, I would contend, given that I know a lot of the broader anti Castro Cuban diaspora, a vast majority of them want that regime gone. And it isn't just because, wow, we want cheaper eggs. It's because the violent Castro regime is unbelievably brutal and did all kinds of despicable shit to Cubans ever since they got on board. Indeed, for instance, under Batista, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Batista was like always a peach, he wasn't. Cubans lived far better under Batista than they did under Castro because of the mismanagement due to like the cronyism that defines communism. When what's his name? You know, the one that lots of like privileged white chicks like to wear on a t-shirt, Che Guevara, was given control over Cuba's like what is it, harvesting of sugar cane, right? The next year. Racist idiot that he was, took Soviet snowplows and put on threshers and set the threshers too low. And then you've seen people starve in Cuba the very next year. They're all done with that. Like we literally put boats out in between Florida and Cuba to bounce signals into Cuba to make sure that Cubans could get their message out to the world, independent of what Castro's regime was trying to do to Cuba.
Apparently, the 2026 report analysis showed that so from among Cubans, between 35 to 40% of them, this is the hard opposition. So these are the people deeply desperate due to 20-hour blackouts and food shortages. Many in this group openly say the Americans have to come to end this, viewing intervention as a necessary evil to remove the regime. So that's between 35 to 40%. Then we have 40% to 50%. This is the passive middle. They hate the government but fear military intervention. They worry about urban warfare becoming a colony or seeing the same violence that occurred during the recent US operation in Venezuela. And then there's the 20% people. These are pro regime people. These people obviously militantly opposed to any US presence. So so the so yeah, so it's basically here 30 to 40% for change with military. It also shows that
which
the
is
vast
not a
majority of them are
majority.
opposed. It's not a majority. The majority is opposed to the regime, but 40, like
I'm opposed to
35%
Bibi.
of,
I don't want the Saudis kidnapping him. I want Israelis voting him out.
yeah, yeah, obviously, yeah. I'm just telling you what the reports show, right? So with regards to Hezbollah, you asked over that. Actually, let me see this. So among the diaspora, I think the numbers are different. The among the diaspora, the numbers are much bigger in defense of military support. Um, Let me see if I could get that. So here, among the Cuban diaspora, support for military intervention is approximately 60 to 70% within the hardline and Republican leaning segments, especially following the 2026 US operation in Venezuela. In contrast, younger Cuban Americans and those who arrive after 2015 are much less supportive, generally favoring economic engagement and remittance over military action. Let me actually tell you about Hezbollah as well. So, the US government issued an executive order declaring national emergency, especially accusing Cuba of providing a safe haven for Hezbollah and Hamas. The US maintains that Cuba helps groups build security and economic ties to destabilize the Western Hemisphere. So Cuba maintains a very close strategic partnership with Iran. Here it means Islamic Republic. Here it says Iran, which is the primary sponsor of Hezbollah. This leads to a friend of my friend dynamic, where Cuba provides diplomatic support to Hezbollah linked interest in exchange for Iranian oil and economic aid. So reports suggest that Cuba's G2 intelligence service and Hezbollah operatives have shared information, particularly regarding U.S. activities in Latin America. Cuba has also been accused of facilitating Hezbollah's presence in Venezuela to help keep the Maduro regime in power. So the Cuban government officially denies any ties to Hezbollah, calling the U.S. claim lies. designed to justify their ongoing economic blockade. They argue that any Middle Eastern individuals on the islands are primarily Palestinian medical students. So that's the answer. That's what
Okay.
I'm seeing right. Yeah.
Could you put that in the chat? That link.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Jeffrey wanted to add something, but guys, we need after this like short, very short, and then after that we can move on.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on a lot of it. Look, and this isn't meant to be a personal attack, it's just an observation. It seems more like you're trying to hide in, not you, Samantha, it seems like you're trying to hide in the process to stop the decisive removal of what you previously almost or surely viewed as a fellow communist, actor, right? Rip the band-aid off quick. There is no comparison between Benjamin Netanyahu and or the House of Saud and say the violent Castro regime that has occupied Cuba since the late 50s. There is no comparison whatsoever. Like, legitimately, Cubans fucking hate the Castro regime. They hate them, right? You don't brave 90 miles of shark infested water on a used up truck inner tube to get to Miami if where you're coming from is awesome, right? Nobody's doing that the other way. And I'm not trying to be shitty, Samantha. I'm just saying, like, legitimately, just rip the band-aid off. I know it's hard.
Let me just say, I just really want to quickly defend Samantha because I don't think she needs to do it faster than she is, because I think Samantha is very open minded to listening. The fact that she came out of a communist cult and she's now here with us and listening to all of this, that's like a huge improvement. And I actually really admire her flexibility and her openness to hearing opposite views, especially given that in a cult, like, it's not just misinformation, is like a psychological abuse, in a way that when people come out of a cult, they have actually such a defensive reaction to any opposing views. The fact that she is even here, like, talking to us, is really impressive. So I just wanted to just say that.
Nobody's attacking Samantha. I'm just voicing an observation to minimize the cognitive dissonance. That's my goal,
Yeah.
right?